Imagine a frigid Christmas night in 1776, snow whipping across the Delaware River like the frozen breath of winter itself. Hessian soldiers huddle in Trenton, New Jersey, oblivious to the ragtag army slipping through ice floes under cover of darkness. At the helm stands a figure etched in resolve, his face stern against the howling gale, leading 2,400 men on a desperate gamble that could birth a nation or bury it forever. This is George Washington, the indomitable leader who refused to yield. Hello, history enthusiasts, and welcome to a gripping journey through the life of the man who forged America from the fires of revolution. If George Washington's unyielding spirit inspires you, drop a quick comment below. What moment from his life fires you up the most? Born in 1732 on a modest Virginia plantation called Pope's Creek, young George grew up in a world of tobacco fields and frontier wildness. His father died when he was just 11, thrusting him into manhood amid the raw edges of colonial life. By 16, he was surveying uncharted lands in the Shenandoah Valley, dodging rattlesnakes, and forging paths through dense forests that tested his grit from the start. But destiny sharpened its blade on the jagged shores of imperial ambition. As tensions simmered between Britain and her American colonies, Washington volunteered for service in the Virginia militia, his eyes fixed on duty. In 1753, at 21, Governor Dinwiddie dispatched him on a perilous mission through French-held Ohio Country territory. Snowstorms battered his small party as they trekked 900 miles, delivering an ultimatum that ignited the French and Indian War. Washington's calm under fire earned whispers of legend. Promoted to lieutenant colonel, he faced his first taste of battle at Jumonville Glen, where a skirmish exploded into chaos. Amid musket smoke and falling comrades, he rallied his men, his voice cutting through the fray like a blade. Though outnumbered, they held, but the victory carried a shadow. Rumors swirled that the French commander had been assassinated under a flag of truce. Undeterred, Washington pushed forward to Fort Necessity, where torrential rains turned the ground to mud, and 600 French troops encircled his 400. Surrender came, but not defeat. Paroled back to Virginia, he emerged with scars and stories that marked him as unbreakable. By 1755, as aide to British General Edward Braddock, disaster struck on the Monongahela. Braddock's redcoats marched in rigid lines, easy prey for hidden French and Indian marksmen. Bullets tore through ranks. Braddock fell mortally wounded. Washington, horses shot from under him 4 times, seized command. "I luckily escaped without a wound," he later wrote, Providence his shield, as he covered the retreat that saved the remnants. These frontier crucibles forged a leader who thrived in chaos. Virginia's House of Burgesses appointed him commander of all colonial forces, where he transformed ragtag militias into disciplined units. Yet frustration mounted. British arrogance clashed with colonial pride. Washington resigned in 1758, returning to Mount Vernon, his half-built paradise on the Potomac. There, he married the widowed Martha Custis, blending families and fortunes into a stable haven. But whispers of unrest echoed from Boston, where taxes without representation stoked rebellion. As the 1760s unfolded, Parliament's Stamp Act and Townshend duties lit the fuse. Washington, once loyal, now seethed in silence. By 1774, he donned his old militia uniform for Virginia's extra-legal convention, signaling his shift. When shots rang out at Lexington and Concord in April 1775, The Second Continental Congress named him Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. At 43, with no formal military training beyond brutal experience, he accepted the charge that would demand everything. Little did the delegates know, they had unleashed a force that would defy empires. The Continental Congress gathered in Philadelphia that sweltering summer of 1775, delegates eyeing the tall Virginian with his powdered wig and piercing gaze. Washington arrived on horseback, exuding quiet authority that silenced doubters. He inherited an army of farmers and blacksmiths, ill-equipped and untested, facing the world's mightiest empire. British redcoats under General William Howe loomed in Boston, their cannons trained on the rebel heartland. Washington wasted no time. He fortified Dorchester Heights overlooking the city, hauling heavy guns captured at Ticonderoga. Under cover of night, dawn revealed the impossible. American artillery staring down the harbor. Howe evacuated Boston in March 1776, a bloodless triumph that electrified the colonies. Yet, victory's glow faded fast. Washington pursued to New York, where 32,000 British troops landed, outnumbering his force 3-1. Disaster unfolded on Long Island in August. Outflanked by fog-shrouded maneuvers, Washington's men crumbled under bayonet charges. Retreat became survival. He evacuated Manhattan under relentless fire, ferrying thousands across the East River in a miracle of seamanship. Brooklyn Heights fell, but the army lived. Critics howled for his head, pamphlets branding him incompetent. Undaunted, he pressed north to White Plains, then across New Jersey, his ranks melting from 20,000 to 3,000 as enlistments expired and winter bit deep. By December, pursuit closed in. General Charles Cornwallis harried the ragged column, capturing forts and supplies. Washington vanished into the Pine Barrens, evading nooses that tightened daily. Then came that fateful Christmas night. Rowboats groaned under the weight of the men and cannon, churning through cake-like ice. At 2 a.m., they landed unseen, muskets primed. Dawn brought the assault on Trenton. Hessians, hung over from holiday revels, reeled in confusion. Washington led the charge himself, saber flashing, as his men poured grape shot into the streets. In 45 minutes, over 900 prisoners filled the streets, with minimal American losses. The audacity stunned the world. Washington wheeled north to Princeton, smashing another British column in a dawn bayonet clash. He stood amid the melee, hatless and exposed, rallying faltering lines until victory secured. Enlistments surged, the revolution breathed anew. But Howe regrouped, capturing Philadelphia by September 1777. Washington shadowed from afar, clashing bloodily at Brandywine and Germantown. Winter camped at Valley Forge, 12 miles from Congress. 12,000 starved and shivered in log huts, smallpox and dysentery, claiming 1 in 4. Baron von Steuben arrived from Prussia, drilling the survivors into a professional force. Washington walked the lines daily, sharing meager rations, his presence a bulwark against despair. Naked and starving as they are, he wrote, they are animated with the spirit of liberty. Spring 1778 brought renewal. France entered the war, their fleet tilting the scales. Yet betrayal lurked. General Benedict Arnold, once a daring hero, festered with resentment. Washington sensed the rot but trusted too long. Word of French alliance spread like wildfire through Valley Forge, stealing hearts for the campaigns ahead. Washington emerged with an army reborn, disciplined and fierce. British Lord Cornwallis shifted south, ravaging the Carolinas, but Washington's focus sharpened north. In June 1778, he struck at Monmouth Courthouse, New Jersey, chasing Clinton's retreating army in sweltering heat. General Charles Lee botched the opening, fleeing in panic, but Washington thundered up, cursing him publicly, "Damnation!" before personally wheeling the lines. All day volleys thundered. At dusk, the British withdrew, bloodied and spent. The war dragged into stalemate. Washington orchestrated from afar his genius in endurance. He quelled the Conway cabal, a congressional plot to oust him, exposing whispers of monarchy in his shadow. Then came the thunderbolt. Arnold's treason at West Point in 1780. The turncoat general plotted to surrender the Hudson fortress for gold, but Major John Andre's capture unraveled it. Arnold fled to British lines. Washington hanged Andre with regret, his mercy tempered by justice. Southern fortunes waned until generals like Nathaniel Greene turned the tide, bleeding Cornwallis dry through Fabian retreats. By 1781, the trap snapped shut. French Admiral de Grasse's fleet blockaded Chesapeake Bay, bottling Cornwallis at Yorktown. Washington marched south 400 miles in secrecy, joining Lafayette and Rochambeau. On October 19th, British drums beat surrender as 8,000 redcoats stacked arms before 24,000 Franco-Americans. America stood on victory's edge, but Washington refused a crown. He resigned his commission to Congress in Annapolis on December 23, 1783. The sword returned like Cincinnatus to his plow. Mount Vernon called, yet chaos brewed. Shays' rebellion in 1786 exposed the Articles of Confederation's frailty. Farmers in arms against taxes, states bickering like fiefdoms. Washington's voice summoned a convention in Philadelphia, 1787. 55 delegates assembled, but only one could unify them. Washington presided, his silence commanding debate. The Constitution emerged from sweaty summer debates, a bold frame balancing power. Ratified by 1788, it crowned imperfect genius. Unanimously elected president in 1789, he took the oath on April 30th in New York, hand on a Masonic Bible. The preservation of the sacred fire of liberty, he vowed, is entrusted to you. Yet factions stirred immediately. In the fledgling capital of New York, then Philadelphia, Washington navigated treacherous waters as America's first president. He established precedents with deliberate grace. Cabinet meetings birthing Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton and Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, their rivalry foreshadowing storms. The Bill of Rights sailed through in 1791, safeguarding freedoms amid fears of overreach. Whiskey rebels in western Pennsylvania tested federal muscle in 1794. Farmers distilled spirits to evade a hated excise tax, torching homes of revenue agents. Washington mobilized 13,000 militia, donning uniform once more at 62, to lead them westward. The insurgents scattered without a shot, affirming national authority. Yet Hamilton's Bank of the United States ignited fury. Jefferson decried it as monarchical overreach, birthing Federalists and Democratic Republicans. Foreign tempests raged. France's Revolution spilled blood across the Atlantic. Citizen Genet arrived in 1793, commissioning privateers from American ports. Washington issued neutrality, enraging Paris. Britain seized U.S. ships, impressing sailors into their navy. Jay's Treaty in 1794 averted war, but yielded little, fueling partisan rage. Washington, weathered vilification, caricatured as a tyrant. By 1796, age wearied him. His farewell address, penned with Hamilton, warned against permanent alliances, sectionalism, and party passions. They served to organize faction, to give it an artificial and extraordinary force. He retired to Mount Vernon, farmer once more, but death stalked. On December 14th, 1799, after riding in snow to inspect estates, fever gripped him. Doctors bled him relentlessly, 5 pints in 12 hours. At 67, the man who outlasted armies slipped away, whispering, "'Tis well." A nation mourned 10 days, from Savannah to Portsmouth. Black drapes shrouded streets, bells tolled 67 times. Congress wore crepe for 6 months, yet his true forge lay in the Union he welded. Generations later, his shadow loomed over civil strife. Episode 5. As the 19th century dawned, Washington's legacy pulsed through a growing republic. The War of 1812 echoed his defiance. Madison invoked revolutionary spirit against British invasions anew. Andrew Jackson's route at New Orleans in 1815 crowned it, but Washington's model of resilience inspired. Westward expansion tested his vision. Louisiana Purchase in 1803 doubled the land. Lewis and Clark tracing paths he once surveyed. Civil War tore the seams in 1861. Abraham Lincoln gazed upon the Mount Vernon tomb, swearing loyalty to the unbreakable thread. "If the rebellion drives me from Washington," he said, "I shall never go further than Arlington." Across the Potomac from the capital Washington founded, Union armies marched under his banners, Gettysburg's fields sanctified by his ghost. Reconstruction mended wounds, but industrialization forged new fires. Washington presided over World's Fairs, his image on currency from 1869. Mount Rushmore's 1927 chisel struck granite likenesses. Jefferson beside him, eternal guardians. World War I called on doughboys chanting his name. World War II's arsenal of democracy mirrored his continental forge. Through it all, myths accreted. Parson Weems spun cherry tree tales in 1800. "I cannot tell a lie," burnishing boyhood virtue. Mason Weems peddled it to instill morality, though truth lay in harsher surveys and battles. Slavery shadowed his record. Over 300 souls at Mount Vernon, freed in his will but bound till death. He navigated Virginia's peculiar institution warily, manumitting them posthumously, a quiet rupture. Historians probe deeper now. Washington's body, slave to routine, rose at 5 a.m., danced minuets with grace, endured dental agonies from ivory and lead teeth. His letters reveal a mind of strategy, not oratory, terse commands birthing armies. Yet what indomitable spark refused surrender? Delve into the crucible of Valley Forge, where Washington's leadership transcended tactics. 12,000 souls endured 1777's winter hell. Barefoot marches leaving bloody prints in snow, huts drafty tombs for typhus victims. He foraged Philadelphia markets incognito, bartering for flour. Mutinies brewed. Pennsylvania line soldiers marched on Congress in 1781. Bayonets fixed over pay. Washington met them at Princeton, voice steady. "You have marched without pay, fought without support. Continue, and victory crowns you." His genius lay in nurture. He promoted Marquis de Lafayette, the 19-year-old French noble who bridged Old World chivalry and New World fire. "He lives upon a small estate," Washington wrote, "and has foolishly involved himself in the expense of the war." Lafayette repaid with devotion, scouting British lines, rallying French aid. Von Steuben's Prussian drill transformed scarecrows into soldiers, bayonet charges replacing panic flight. Washington quelled darker doubts. In 1777, Newburgh officers plotted coup, demanding back pay or pensions. He addressed them tearfully, spectacles fumbling from pocket. Gentlemen, you will permit me to put them on. You must not think I am abandoning you. Silence fell. Loyalty surged. Such moments wove personal fealty into national fabric. Diplomatically, he juggled allies. Rochambeau's 5,000 French troops camped at Newport. De Grasse's 28 ships sealed Yorktown. Washington's march south feinted toward Clinton, fooling spies with decoy wagons. At Yorktown, he orchestrated the siege. Trenches dug by night, French engineers breaching redoubts, Cornwallis's surrender drumroll echoed globally. Post-war, he crushed half-pay riots, embodying civilian control. Constitutional Convention saw him broker compromises, Senate for states, House for people. As president, he crushed Janet's intrigue, sending the envoy packing. Whiskey Rebellion proved federal sinew. His militia muster set precedent for Lincoln and beyond. Indomitability flowed from stoic core. Providence his guide, duty his compass. Washington's private forge shaped public steel. Mount Vernon sprawled 8,000 acres by 1799, 5 farms yielding wheat, corn, rye. He experimented with plows, crop rotation, two-field system predating Jefferson's notes, fish fertilizer enriched soil. He imported merino sheep from Spain. Overseers whipped efficiency, but he chided cruelty in letters. Do not punish them until you have found them at fault. Martha managed the mansion, key to keys dangling from waist. They hosted luminaries. Lafayette revisited in 1784, toasting old glories. Washington's library held 900 volumes, military treatises, histories from Plutarch to Hume. He rode 5 hours daily, foxhounds baying at heels. Dentistry plagued him. Dr. John Greenwood crafted spring-loaded sets from hippopotamus ivory, human teeth. Washington's shadow stretched across centuries, a lodestar for leaders in tumult. Civil War's inferno tested it. Lincoln pocketed his inaugural Bible, invoking revolutionary mantle against secession. Washington is dead, Jefferson Davis sneered, but his precedents live. Union victories at Antietam, Vicksburg echoed Valley Forge tenacity. Gettysburg 1863 climaxed under his gaze. Eisenhower later noted portraits in Meade's tent. Lincoln's address consecrated ground. Government of the people, by the people. Reconstruction invoked his unionism. Grant's tomb mirrors Mount Vernon's neoclassical repose. Industrial age accelerated his mythos. Centennial Exposition 1876 displayed artifacts, sword, camp chest. Dollar bill from 1869 bore his profile, evolving to greenback icon. Teddy Roosevelt climbed Rushmore's scaffold, hailing the greatest American. World War I posters rallied for Washington and liberty. Pershing's AEF trained on his manuals. Depression's despair summoned FDR's fireside chats, New Deal echoing Hamiltonian systems. Pearl Harbor, 1941, reignited Forge. Eisenhower commanded from his namesake, memorial plans. D-Day's beaches, Normandy's fields. Allied generals studied Yorktown parallels. Cold War pitted his republic against totalitarianism. Kennedy's moon race channeled frontier surveys. Civil rights era reclaimed him. March on Washington, 1963, echoed his march to Yorktown. King's dream rooted in declaration he defended. Vietnam fractured precedents. Watergate's fall recalled his resignation virtue. Scholars sift nuances. Ron Chernow's biography unveils ambition masked as modesty. Land speculator amassing 60,000 acres. Joseph Ellis probes emotional restraint, fatherless boy craving approbation. DNA tests confirm no biological heirs, infertility speculated. Yet core endures, indomitable, will forging nation from discord. Modern lenses magnify Washington's forge. Mount Vernon, preserved since 1858 by Women's Association, draws millions yearly. Distillery recreates rye whiskey, gristmill grinds flour. Virtual reality tours let visitors ford Delaware, hear Hessian's route. Historiography evolves. Early hagiography yielded to warts, slaveholder complicit in evil. Annette Gordon Reed illuminates Hemming's ties at Jefferson's Monticello, paralleling Washington's dour slaves. Yet manumission will stand's outlier. 10% of founders freed holdings. Global icons nod homage. France's Bastille Day traces to Lafayette's bond. Poland's Pulaski statue in D.C. honors revolutionary cavalry. India's Gandhi studied nonviolent resistance against empire Washington shattered. China's Deng Xiaoping pondered federalism in reforms. Pop culture immortalizes. Hamilton musical revives 2015. Lin-Manuel Miranda channeling rap battles into cabinet fights. Nonstop. Films like 1932's Washington at Valley Forge or 2020's Hamilton blend fact with flair. Video games cast him as strategist in Assassin's Creed 3. Challenges persist. January 6, 2021, saw rioters breach Capitol he helped cite. His statue toppled in some protests, restored amid debate. Statues nationwide, over 170 spark reckonings, plaques adding slavery context. Endurance defines him. COVID-19 vaccines echoed his smallpox inoculations at Cambridge 1776, risking troops for immunity. Climate marches invoke his rotations, sustainable ethos. What sustains this forge? A will that bent history's arc. In the end, George Washington's indomitable leadership forged not just a nation, but an ideal, resilient republic tested yet unbroken. From Delaware's ice to constitutional ink, he embodied sacrifice over ambition, unity over faction. His farewell warnings echo today. Guard against division, cherish liberty's sacred fire. Through revolutions, wars, reckonings, his example endures. A compass for leaders, beacon for citizens. America, born of his grit, stands as testament one man's resolve can shape epics. Thank you for joining this journey. What aspect of Washington's legacy will you carry forward? Share in the comments, subscribe for more untold stories. History awaits your voice.